Imagine that right now, at this very moment, your life is branching in thousands of different directions. In one possible future, you decide to take a risk. You change careers, move cities, start a project, or pursue a relationship that transforms your life. In another future, you decide to stay exactly where you are. You keep the same routines, the same habits, the same environment. And in yet another future, a completely unexpected event changes everything. A meeting, an opportunity, a conversation that redirects your path. From your current perspective, none of these futures exist yet. But they do exist as possibilities. Physics has a name for this strange state of possibility. It's called superposition. In quantum mechanics, particles do not exist in a single defined state before measurement. Instead, they exist in many possible states simultaneously. A particle can be in multiple positions, multiple energies, multiple configurations, all at once. Only when a measurement occurs does the system settle into one specific outcome. This is known as the collapse of the wave function. Now, obviously, human lives are not literally quantum particles. Your brain is not an electron orbiting a nucleus. But the mathematical idea of superposition, the idea that multiple possibilities exist before one becomes real, turns out to be a remarkably powerful way of understanding human decision-making. Because in a very real sense, your life does exist in a superposition of possibilities. Before you make a decision, multiple futures are open. Once you act, one path becomes reality, while others disappear. Understanding this changes how we think about choice, success, identity, and even destiny. But to see why this idea matters, we have to start with a deeper question. Why does the universe operate through probabilities at all? For centuries, scientists believed the universe was deterministic, like a perfectly predictable machine. If you knew the position and velocity of every particle in the universe, you could theoretically calculate the entire future. This idea dominated physics until the early 20th century. Then quantum mechanics arrived and shattered that certainty. Physicists discovered that at the smallest scales of reality, events do not follow deterministic laws. Instead, they follow probability distributions. Particles behave like waves of potential. Before measurement, they are not in one place or another. They exist as many possible outcomes described by a probability function. One of the pioneers of this idea was the physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who developed the mathematical equation that describes how these probability waves evolve over time. His famous thought experiment, Schrödinger's cat, illustrated the bizarre implications of quantum superposition. Until observed, the cat is both alive and dead, not literally in two states at once in a classical sense, but existing as a set of probabilities. The universe itself, at its most fundamental level, operates through potential. Reality is not predetermined. It unfolds from possibilities. Now let's zoom out from physics and look at the human brain. Because neuroscientists have discovered something equally fascinating about how our minds work. Your brain is not simply reacting to the world around you. It is constantly predicting the future. According to research from neuroscientist Carl Friston, the brain operates as a prediction engine. Instead of waiting for sensory information to arrive, it continuously generates models of what it expects to happen next. Every second, your brain is simulating possible futures. What will that person say next? What will happen if you take this action? What will the outcome be if you make this decision? Your mind constantly constructs multiple potential scenarios and evaluates them. In other words, before a decision is made, your brain is exploring a superposition of possible outcomes. These possibilities compete with each other inside your neural networks. Eventually, one path becomes dominant, and you act. This process is closely connected to decision theory, a field studied extensively by behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman showed that human decision-making is shaped by probabilities, expectations, and perceived risks. Our minds simulate potential outcomes and weigh them against one another. Should I take this opportunity or stay safe? Should I speak up or remain silent? Should I invest in the future or protect the present? Every decision collapses one possibility into reality. And once a decision is made, the other possibilities vanish. But here's where things get interesting. Most people imagine that life choices are isolated events. In reality, decisions interact with each other in complex ways. One choice changes the probability of many future choices. Think of life as a branching tree. At the beginning, many branches are possible. But as you move forward, the branches narrow. Paths begin to diverge. Some futures become more likely, while others become almost impossible. Complexity scientists describe this process as path dependence. Once a system begins moving in a certain direction, that direction becomes increasingly stable. Small decisions accumulate. Over time, they reshape the landscape of possibilities. This insight appears in many areas of science. In physics, small changes in initial conditions can produce dramatically different outcomes. Meteorologist Edward Lorenz discovered this while studying weather systems. He found that tiny variations in starting conditions could lead to completely different weather patterns. This phenomenon became known as the butterfly effect. The same principle applies to human lives. Small decisions compound over time. A conversation leads to a friendship. A friendship leads to an opportunity. An opportunity leads to a career. A career leads to an entirely different life trajectory. From the outside, these transformations sometimes look sudden. But beneath the surface, they emerged from countless tiny probability shifts. Psychology provides another lens for understanding this process. The beliefs you hold about yourself influence the choices you make. Psychologist Albert Bandura introduced the concept of self-efficacy, which describes a person's belief in their ability to influence outcomes. People with high self-efficacy attempt more challenges and persist longer when facing obstacles. Those behaviors dramatically increase the probability of success. The difference is not magic. It is probability. One set of beliefs leads to more attempts, more learning, and more opportunities. Another set of beliefs leads to avoidance and stagnation. Over time, these behavioral differences produce dramatically different futures. Neuroscience reveals that these patterns are physically embedded in the brain through a process known as neuroplasticity. Neural circuits strengthen when they are repeatedly activated. The psychologist Donald Hebb summarized this principle with a famous phrase: "Neurons that fire together, wire together." Every habit strengthens certain neural pathways while weakening others. Over time, your brain becomes optimized for the behaviors you repeat. This creates what scientists call attractor states. An attractor state is a stable pattern that systems tend to fall into. For example, a person who repeatedly avoids risk may become trapped in an attractor state of caution and stability. A person who repeatedly explores new opportunities may enter an attractor state of growth and change. Neither outcome is predetermined. They emerge from patterns of behavior interacting with environments. And here's where the idea of superposition becomes philosophically powerful. At any moment, multiple possible identities exist within you. The cautious version, the adventurous version, the creative version, the disciplined version. Each of these identities corresponds to different behaviors and different probability trajectories. But only one of them becomes dominant, depending on the choices you reinforce. In this sense, identity itself can be seen as a collapsed state of many potential selves. You are not simply discovering who you are. You are continuously selecting which version of yourself becomes real. The philosopher and physicist Carlo Rovelli has argued that reality itself may be fundamentally relational. According to his interpretation of quantum mechanics, properties of systems only exist in relation to interactions. In other words, reality emerges from relationships rather than existing as fixed independent objects. Human lives may follow a similar pattern. Your identity emerges from interactions with environments, people, and decisions. It is not fixed. It evolves. This perspective reframes the way we think about success. Success is often imagined as a distant destination, a point you reach after years of effort. But from a probabilistic perspective, success is more like a trajectory. It is the result of moving through a landscape of possibilities in ways that gradually increase the probability of favorable outcomes. This doesn't mean every effort leads to success. Probability does not guarantee specific results. But it does mean that consistent behaviors shift the odds. Imagine two individuals starting from similar circumstances. One repeatedly invests in learning, networking, and experimentation. The other remains within familiar routines and avoids uncertainty. 5 years later, their lives may look completely different. Not because of destiny, but because of probability. One path increased exposure to opportunity. The other minimized it. Each decision nudged the system. Eventually, those nudges accumulated into radically different outcomes. This is why many breakthroughs feel sudden. To outside observers, success may appear overnight. But in reality, it emerged from a long sequence of small probability shifts. Understanding life as a probability landscape also changes how we think about failure. If reality were deterministic, failure might mean that success was never possible. But in a probabilistic universe, failure simply means one path did not work. Other paths remain available. Each attempt generates information. Each experience refines your understanding of the landscape. Over time, this learning process guides you toward more promising trajectories. In science, exploration of possibilities is essential. Experiments fail constantly, but each failure reveals new information about the system. Human lives follow a similar process. The key difference between stagnation and growth often lies in how many possibilities a person explores. People who experiment more discover more pathways, and discovering more pathways increases the probability of finding transformative ones. Which brings us back to the central insight of this video. Right now, your life exists in a superposition of possibilities. Multiple futures are open. Multiple identities are available. Multiple trajectories are waiting to unfold. Each decision collapses some possibilities while strengthening others. Your future is not predetermined, but it is also not random. It emerges from the interaction between probability and action. Every habit you repeat, every environment you enter, every relationship you build, every risk you take. All of these choices reshape the probability landscape of your life. You are not controlling the universe, but you are navigating it. And in a universe built from possibilities rather than certainties, navigation matters. Perhaps the most empowering realization is this: you do not need to know exactly how the future will unfold. You only need to move in ways that increase the probability of the future you want. Small decisions accumulate. Paths emerge. Possibilities collapse into reality. And somewhere within the vast superposition of futures, the life you are searching for may already exist as a possibility, waiting for the moment when your choices bring it into reality.